Games. A never-ending entertainment of plot-based to even the slightest of indie games that are made by a single developer or at max 4. Games aren't just an entertainment source for some people, they are actual stories, and for other people, some of those games hold more memories than we can anticipate. For example, when we mention GTA, the first thing you'll think of is CJ and GTA San Andreas, one of the best Rockstar games ever released. But of course, not everyone is attached to that game. There's a lot of big studios back in the days that actually cared about the plot and the consumer's opinion more than a game's texture and high resolution graphics. Because even though we live in 2022, most of the teenagers, so say, play on low-end PCs, which means they cannot really play the majority of AAA titles. Of course, even back in the days this was an issue, but the companies actually took it into consideration and tried to optimize their games and do their best to avoid the poor performance, which led to unfinished projects, or at least that's how some of the games I've played when I was a child felt like. But one that did not feel like that was a game made by Capcom. Oh yeah, you heard me right. A game under the title of Remember Me. Before we start, I just want to say this video contains spoilers, but I will notify you when the spoilers will begin. Development of the game began in 2008 when Dontnod Entertainment was formed, initially called a GIFT. The original concept of the game was a world flooded from global warming, with a key gameplay mechanic being the player character using jet skis to navigate a coastal city. Later, the team became interested in the concept of memory as a central theme and redesigned the game accordingly. Although game's director, Jean-Maxime Moris, was reluctant to set the game in Paris since the studio was based there. It was originally developed as a role-playing game with Sony publishing it exclusively for PlayStation 3, starting full development in February 2010, following creative disagreements between Dontnod and Sony, and the subsequent cancellation of the project in February 2011 because of budget cuts. The project was presented at 2011 Gamescom Trade Fair, in the hope that it would garner the attention necessary to secure another publishing deal. Capcom purchased the intellectual property in 2012 and provided funding for the project, reimagining it as an action-adventure game for release on multiple platforms. The game's theme was inspired by social network sites that abound in the modern world, with Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter cited as examples. Morris explained that while some elements looked fantastical, the game was grounded in the real world in terms of how social networking might evolve over the coming decades. Remember Me was considered to be the digital view of human identity compared to Dontnod's Life is Strange, its analog counterpart. The game was influenced by classic cyberpunk anime such as Akira and Ghost in the Shell. And one of the literary works referenced in the game is George Orwell's novel 1984. When asked in an interview why he made the protagonist as a woman, Morris replied that he wanted a game in the cyberpunk genre that was more about emotion, intimacy, identity, and the way technology would intersect those. So it made more sense for the player character to be a woman. However, when the game was shown to potential publishers, many were discouraged from backing the project, saying that a male character would be more successful. Remember Me features platforming, exploration, and melee combat. The game is played as Nilin from a third-person view and introduces the mechanics of memory remixing, entering and rearranging a target's memory to manipulate them. Players accomplish this by replaying a memory and modifying details to change the target's recollection of the outcome. Another key mechanic of the gameplay is stealing memories from certain targets and using points called remembrance to replay the memory in real time. This is often needed to proceed through the game or avoid hazards otherwise hidden from the player. When the player is low on health, the screen will glitch until a sufficient amount of health is regained. Nilin encounters puzzles in the form of riddles she must solve to unlock doors so as to further progress in the story. In terms of combat, the game allows the player to create and customize their own moves in the Combo Lab, which uses 4 categories of fighting moves called presets. This is done by chaining them together, made possible through earning PMP, or Procedural Mastering Power, with a limit of 4 combos being active at any time. The presets moves are Regen, Power, Chain, and Cooldown. Regen stands for healing, which allow player to regain health every successful combo. Power will increase the damage you deal to your enemies. Chain will duplicate and double any of the previous moves. Finally, cooldown is regenerating the S person's energy. There are 50,000 possible precinct combination. 5 S precinct moves will be made available to the player over the course of the game. The moves enable them to do things like stun group of enemies, move at high speed and land more hits, or turn hostile robots into allies, which then self-destruct. Players also have access to projectile-based weapons, like the Spammer and Junk Bolt. Now let's talk more about the game from my perspective. Before I begin, I just want to say I did not finish the game, and the reason is I couldn't bother anymore. The game's story was very boring to me, and I just don't buy this sense in future plot they are going for. As much as I hate to say this, but I did not enjoy playing this game after the second chapter. It just felt repetitive and the combo system is disgustingly hard, and sometimes when I try to hit it, it doesn't allow me and glitches while I get my ass kicked by the enemies. Speaking of the enemies, they are super easy. All you need to do is memorize your combo. Good luck doing that, by the way. And you basically spam it until the fight ends. Don't get me wrong, and the concept is very good, and at its time, I think it might have been implemented very well. But since I'm not a fan of fighting games and smashing buttons and rhythm, the game's combo system didn't age very well for me. I kinda hoped it had fighting mechanics like sleeping dogs, for example. It would have been 100% better. The game is 9 years old and has better graphics than Cyberpunk easily. No RTX, and still the lighting and shadows just feel top notch. The enemies feel like a Unity stock zombie asset, just a little modified, but honestly I can't complain. I very much enjoyed its visuals more than anything about it. And I don't know how's that supposed to make the game. In terms of performance, I have medium NPC and the game run at more than 60 FPS, but I had it locked at 60 for the video. The thing is, every time it loads a new area or checkpoint, it lags like hell. I think that's because the game's engine switches areas without a loading screen super fast, which does this to my poor computer, or it might not be that optimized for AMD rigs. My guess is as good as anyone's. And what makes the gameplay much worse is quick time events, finishing moves for final chapter bosses. It is disgusting. First of all, it doesn't show you the buttons, for example mouse 1 or 2, A or B, X or square. It shows you the combo icons, the kick icon and the knuckles or punch icon. I just don't understand why all games had quick time events back in the days. But I gotta say, only happens in finishing moves for bosses. The whole game felt like super easy, but I can guarantee most of you guys who wish to play this game will fail the quick time event every time, at least twice unless you are a girl and you can multitask and analyze things at God's speed. That I've mostly said negative stuff, let's look at the bright side of the game. First of all, even though I said I hate the combat in the game, sometimes I do enjoy it. When I get that sick clean combo, and the ragdolls over the normal enemy type models aren't so bad. And they kinda tolerable. The main character feels super polished and fresh, and Edge, the voice that speaks to you along the game through your earpiece, is also very mysterious. If I speak more than this, I might spoil something for the ones who wanna play the game for themselves. Finally, the city this game based on, Paris, is pretty gorgeous. Even though it looks trashed and haunted and abandoned, it just has a special feeling to it, an atmosphere that adds that extra sprinkles on its beautiful color grading and graphics in general. I gotta tell you boys and girls, for a 2013 game, it's way ahead of its time in terms of graphics and visuals. Most games I've played, whose AAA titles, had a very shitty graphics plus performance. I was playing this game at 1080p and the graphics settings cranked up. It still ran very good, apart from that lag that happens every time the game loads something new. But I'm gonna blame it on my graphics card drivers. I guess that's what I had to say about the game. In terms of the story, I have played until chapter 4 in the game. I couldn't finish it because it was getting pretty boring and annoying and repetitive for me. And I just didn't dig the story very much. That doesn't mean it's bad, it's just a game that some would love or hate. It has its audience like any other story game. So if you are gonna be playing this game, it's available in Steam, and I also believe it's not that expensive if you don't live in an African country. Thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you guys liked it. Believe it or not, because of how busy I am, it took me around 2 months to finally finish this project I started. And I was meaning to cover the story as well, but since I couldn't finish the game, I don't want to give my opinion about it so early. If you are a person who finished it, or if you are planning to finish the game, after you do that, come back to my channel, leave a comment on this video, and tell me if it's good or not. If it's actually pretty good, I'm gonna do another review, updated one, and give the game another chance. With that said,